I don't overly know how to start this video. I don't think I've ever spoken this openly about my personal experience with therapy. And to some of you that have watched my content for as long as you have, this might surprise you. Now, as the title of this video suggests, we're going to talk about my 15 years in and out of therapy. It is far too dark and moody in here. Now, I first started doing therapy when I was 15 years old. And I did so because I had some pretty traumatic experiences in my life. So if it's alright with you, I'm going to unload a little bit of it. This is probably too sensual, Wilson. I don't think we can sit here like this. You're such a lovely boy, aren't you? I had a lot of people die in a short period of time that I cared about. All totally unrelated. Actually, wrong. 2 of them died at the same time. And off the top of my head, I can't remember all their names. There was 10 in total in an 18-month period when I was about 15. So I've got a list on my phone, so I remember all of the names, so they're never forgot. Robert Parker, Margaret Williams, Rosina Simmons, Tony Williams, Claire Draper, Angela Simmons, Derek Skates, Marie Phelps, Michael Dean, and George Price. All passed within sort of 18 months of each other. At least I built that up in my brain. And ultimately I struggled to deal with their loss. It pretty much seemed like everyone around me that I loved and cared about was dying. They were all leaving and never coming back. I was really angry and had a lot of unanswered questions. So my first step was anger management, and that lasted about 3 sessions. And then I went on to bereavement counselling, and that lasted about 2. And then the NHS does what the NHS does best and chucks you into CBT, of which I did the full stint and completed my 6 sessions, signed off and back out into the world. But deep down, I had terrible abandonment issues. I was worried at the slightest bit of uncertainty and pretty much needed to know the unknown. I think towards the end of that period as well, that was exacerbated by a lot of, if you know what I mean. And even that was a coping mechanism. It's really weird talking about this. It's words that obviously I've said in my head multiple times and to someone that I pay to sit in front of me and listen. But I've not actually sat here and told everyone. I might have rehearsed and told people the events, but probably never told people how it's made me feel. You're very cuddly this evening, Wilson, aren't you? Very cuddly. Very cuddly. You can sense your pops getting a bit deep. I thought I found my rhythm in life for a little bit, but I think looking back now, I was just disassociating really hard. And a breakup pretty much snapped me out of it, if I'm honest. And then the abandonment issues came up. And my mental health probably got to one of its worst places that I'd ever been, even up until this point. I think I really struggle with the loss of people and things, and especially realities that haven't come to fruition yet, platonically and romantically. You know, I am naturally a hopeless romantic. It's why I document as much as I do, because the moment doesn't really hit in the present. And I feel like when I watch back on a lot of my videos and content and even photos, the nostalgia bridges the gap between how I think I should feel in the moment. So for about 4 or 5 years, I dipped in and out of therapy. I went through mindfulness, more cognitive behavioral therapy, and I couldn't get it to stick. I might have had like 7 or 8 therapists throughout that period. And I remember once with one, I think he was a CBT guy, but I was just sitting across him thinking, I don't rate you. I need someone that I look up to. I need someone that I believe is better than me, because why am I going to be taking advice off of someone that I don't believe is better than me? That's the sort of mindset I was in at the time. I was angry, frustrated, and I didn't really believe anyone because I'd had so much shit happen to me. I kind of lived my life on autopilot after I'd closed that chapter of therapy again, and became incredibly codependent on friends and romantic partners, when deep down I fucking hated myself. And I felt like everyone else did too. That's not nice to say out loud, but I fucking meant it. And because I dipped my toe into like the mindfulness and the CBT journey, I started understanding why I acted the way I acted, and majority of which were trauma responses and really unhealthy behaviours. But I didn't actually know how to not do them. And then, I'm embarrassed to say this one. And then another breakup happened that was really out of the blue during COVID and pretty much sent me spiraling. And I was the heaviest I'd ever been. I was binge eating. I wasn't exercising. I was by far the most low I had ever been in my life. Because once again, anybody that I'd ever loved had left. Platonically or romantically. So I was very grateful at this point to have private health, and threw myself straight into Bupa. Did the questionnaires, and I found something called psychodynamic integrative therapy. And this shit changed my fucking mind. My therapist was everything I needed in a therapist. That one person that I was looking for pretty much all along. And because I'd done some of the foundations of mindfulness and cognitive behavioral therapy, I had a decent foundation as to what I was doing, but I didn't really know why I was doing it. So we started from the very beginning. And I mean the very beginning. Like, I nearly died when I was 6. I had my adenoids and tonsils out, and after the operation I internally bled and no one realised it. To the point all my veins collapsed and I was close to going into cardiac arrest. I remember the car journey into hospital. My mum, dad, absolutely distraught. And ever since I was 6 years old, I've known that my life is finite. And that's just about the time your frontal lobe starts developing. So we unpackaged that. Relationship dynamics with family and friends at school and at work and romantically, all unpackaged. So not only did I know what I was doing wrong, I knew why I was doing it. And for the first time in a long time, I kind of understood. I stopped resenting myself for a little while and started to accept that that's done, that's gone. Release everything that was and focus on what you can now. I'll never forget, I still got a quote in my wallet that I carry around with me every day. And it basically says, Why worry if you can change it? And if you can't change it, why worry? I've gone down a rabbit hole of stoicism and understanding what is in my control and what is out of it. And I do a pretty good job of not worrying about the unknown anymore. I mean, fucking hell. There were points in my life where I could not sleep at night because I was scared that I wouldn't wake up. Because when I was 6 and I was internally bleeding, I went to bed that night. And the only reason I woke up is because I felt sick in the middle of the night and there was a tiny speck of blood on my pillow. And my dad actually went to put me back to bed and noticed the blood on the pillow. Called up the hospital, asked, is everything okay? Should he still be feeling sick? What's wrong? And they were like, he's probably fine, we'll just bring him in just in case. If they said it was fine and he put me back to sleep, I probably would have bled out. So I'm very aware of stuff like that. It was only 2 and a bit years ago that I could look up at the night sky and admire the stars because of the space of anyone that's a warrior is technically infinite. You know, we don't know what we're expanding into, and there's a lot of unknown when it comes to astrophysics and space. 2 years ago was the first time I looked up at the stars and just admired its beauty. And I feel like that's kind of a metaphor for me with my life at the moment. Around the age of 28, I was able to start seeing life a little lighter. Now, in that therapy journey of psychodynamic integrative therapy, it wasn't easy in the slightest. I fought a lot. I lied in my therapy sessions as well. And then I almost became codependent on it. I started on like 1 a week and then went up to 2 a week. And she could see I was using it as a crutch. So then pulled me back to a week, and then time did what time does and carried on. I do have a theory about suffering and healing. That it doesn't really matter what you do with your time. Time is it. As cliche as it sounds, time heals. So you could sit and do nothing for 6 months, or you can sit and do all the therapy you need to do. 6 months is still 6 months, and you'll be over it when you're ready. Good boy. Go wee-wees. I've never really felt the full effects of the stigma around men's mental health and therapy in general, which I am eternally grateful for. I have a very loving and supporting family and a loving and supporting friend group sometimes. Obviously, I have the unconditional love with my family and they're always there for me. And sometimes with my friends, you know, you treat others as you wish to be treated, and sometimes that's not reciprocated. But what I've learned through therapy is treat other people as you wish to be treated, but don't expect it in return. People can only meet you as far as they've met themselves, and showing empathy and understanding with a lot of life will just make it nicer and easier. And don't get me wrong, there are still days where I get myself in a tiz and I get really angry because I've got a short fuse. I have a very short fuse, most of which you won't ever see that on social media. But I'm just a normal bloke. Stuff triggers me, stuff sets me off. I think one of the telling times of that was I was coming towards like the last therapy session, and my therapist said, look, you're doing really well, but I think we've kind of reached our limit. And I think there might be some underlying issues there. And she suggested that I go and get a full psychoanalysis done. And I reached out to a psychiatrist and I answered a few questions. And they started to investigate me for attention deficit order and, I don't really know how to say this, autistic tendencies. I would hyper focus on things and I would really, really struggle and get frustrated and angry if I couldn't make sense of things, especially other people and people's emotions. If I didn't understand why they were saying what they were saying, I was like, there's no logic behind it. But there is no logic sometimes around feelings. they can just change. And because I was so desperate for answers, I didn't see the fluidity of it all. Opinions and wants can change at any time. But the issue with the psychiatrist is that she asked me to fill out a shit ton of paperwork. And now, as you know, if someone has attention deficit disorder or tendencies of, because I'm still undiagnosed, it's fucking hard to concentrate on certain things. Even though I'm not hyperactive, I still struggle to do one thing at one time. I mean, I have constant lists in my notes telling me what I need to do on what days and when, and sometimes I have 3 lists with the same things on. But I'll make it work for now. And she asked me to fill out this questionnaire and have my family fill out the questionnaire, and my family filled out the questionnaire, and I didn't. Probably still in my drawer now. I don't know if I was being avoidant at it, or I had other stuff going on and it wasn't a priority. And equally, I don't know if I'm scared of medication, because I've been on medication before. I was on escitalopram for a long time. And when I came off that, I started self-medicating with other fun stuff. But even that got far too deep and consistent. And that's the problem with self-medicating, is you don't really realise it until you realise it. But escitalopram, I think most people get put on sertraline nowadays, but it made me numb, and not in a good way either, because I still had all the thoughts in my head and I couldn't express what I was processing in my head. I just had very, very logical black and white questions and answers, but I couldn't express how any of that made me feel. I was literally a robot for like a year and a half. And this is why I always say it's really important to allow yourself to feel the way you're feeling, because I've been in a position where I physically couldn't, and I've felt the effects of not being able to. Equally, if you're not ready to feel what you think you need to feel, don't make yourself feel bad for it either. There's a lot on social media and in general public that tells you need to do one way or another. Mate, no one knows what the fuck you're going through. No one's experience is linear. But if more people are aware of all the different variations of help you can get and help you can get yourself, I think we would be a little better as a society tackling these things, which is why a lot of the content that I put out, I would say, is proactive rather than reactive. Like, don't get me wrong, the suicide hotlines and everything are amazing, but quite like no one to need them in the first place. I also think with a lot of mental health that it can become people's personality. Sounds very harsh, but your experiences don't necessarily have to become your personality. You have far much more to give people. I've been there myself, where I thought my experiences were me and I projected all of them. It was my whole personality. It was for a little while on social media too. I just want to normalise being a normal bloke and going to the pub with my pals, and also knowing how to have a decent conversation with people about their mental health if they need it. And with myself as well. Because you're no good to anyone else unless you're good to yourself. But I hope that gives you guys a little rough idea as to why I make the content I do, and maybe gives you some credibility when I talk about certain topics. If you've liked this video, please subscribe, hit the bell icon to be notified. Like the video, always helps the algorithm, and comment me something down below that you might not know about me and I'll give you a little bit more information. Love you, bye.